Hello and welcome back to Uplift Equine. We are going over the Horse Protection Act. This is part 2. So before I get into this, I do want to specify that I am not necessarily in total agreement with the Horse Protection Act. There are a few things that I like about it, but overall I think it should be up to the states and our breed and sport organizations to enforce these, not the federal government. Because every state can see what its own unique issues are and try to mitigate them, and even the breed and sport associations can figure out what their unique issues are. So for instance, the Tennessee Walker community can figure out that soaring is their biggest issue. So ideally their sport organizations should have stepped in and regulated that better. And other ones, such as the halter horse for the American Quarter Horse Association, have very different issues with them than, say, the Hunter Jumper Association or the United States Dressage Federation. So having some sort of blanket law put over all of these organizations and the entire industry, I think is a bit too simplistic and not good for the industry. I do understand that the writers of this law, their original intentions were to basically get rid of horses in industry, which I don't agree with at all. But I think as a community, even if this doesn't get passed, because Trump has suspended it for 60 days, I believe that this should be a wake-up call for our community, and we really need to crack down on a lot of these problems. So let's get into the next section, which is access to premises and records. So this is under management, so show management. The management of any horse show, exhibition, horse sale, or auction shall, without fee, charge, assessment, or other compensation, provide APHIS representatives with unlimited access to the grandstands, sale ring, barns, stables, grounds, offices, and all other areas of any horse show, exhibition, sale, or auction, including any adjacent areas, under their direction, control, or supervision for the purpose of inspecting any horses or any records required to be kept by regulation or otherwise maintained. So basically what they're saying is, even if you have a designated area, which you should have a designated area because it kind of like pens them in a little bit, they are still allowed to wander around your facility and your premises, and if they feel it necessary, they could basically just go through your records, which in my opinion is pretty overstepping quite a bit. But yeah, like I said, I don't like it, but that's the law. The management of any horse show, exhibition, sale, or auction shall, without fee, charge, assessment, or other compensation, so compensation from APHIS, provide APHIS representatives with an adequate, safe, accessible area for the visual inspection and observation of horses while such horses are competitively or otherwise performing at any show, exhibition, or while such horses are being sold, auctioned, or offered for sale, auction at any horse sale or horse auction. So this goes into the area that I mentioned before. So providing a safe area, so safe as in away from any kind of traffic, ideally away from any kind of public foot traffic, and probably you should provide some sort of like plug, like electricity plug for whatever things that they want to use. So it would be an area where each horse would walk through, they would do their inspection, they would do everything, and then they would move on and walk away. Likely seating would probably be provided. So in my experience with government representatives, if you provide a comfortable area, they in general tend to kind of stay there unless they have some other ulterior motives or they see something that motivates them to go check something else out. So making them as comfortable as possible is to your advantage as the show management. So for the exhibitors, Each horse owner, exhibitor, or other person having custody or responsibility for any horse at any horse show, exhibition, or horse sale or auction shall, without fee, charge, assessment, or other compensation, admit any APHIS representative or designated qualified person appointed by management to all areas of the barn, compounds, vans, trailers, stables, stalls, paddocks, or other show, exhibition, or sale, auction grounds related to areas at any horse show, exhibition, sale, or auction, for the purpose of inspecting any such horse at any and all reasonable times. So, and again, it's the same thing as show management, is just being pointed towards exhibitors now. So any exhibitors, such as, if you're going to like a clinic or an exhibit. The next one is each horse owner, trainer, exhibitor, or other person having custody or responsibility for any horse at any show, exhibition, sale, or auction shall promptly present his horse for inspection upon notification, orally or in writing, by any APHIS representative or designated qualified person appointed by management that said horse has been selected for examination for the purpose of determining whether such a horse is in compliance with the Act and regulations. So if somebody says that horse is acting strange, or that horse looks like it's been sored or something, and somebody accuses you, you have to get inspected. If APHIS says you've got to get inspected, even if you're packing up, getting ready to go, and you're like, what the heck, you still got to get inspected, which is another government overstep. Inspection, space, and facility requirements. The management of every horse show, exhibition, sale, or auction containing Tennessee walking horses or racking horses. So in the new one that's been suspended currently, that would be all horses, not just Tennessee walking or racking, shall provide without fee sufficient space and facilities for APHIS representatives to carry out their duties under Act and regulations at every horse show, exhibition, sale, or auction containing Tennessee walking horses or racking horses, whether or not management has received prior notification or otherwise knows that such show may be inspected by APHIS. The management of every horse show, exhibition, or sale or auction which does not contain Tennessee walking horses, racking horses shall provide without fee such sufficient space and facilities when requested to do so by APHIS representatives. With respect to such space and facilities, it shall be the responsibility of management to provide at least the following. A. Sufficient space in a convenient location to horse show, exhibition, horse sale, or auction arena, acceptable to the APHIS show veterinarian, which horses may be physically and thermographically or otherwise inspected. So it can't just be out in the Yonkers area. It has to be pretty close to the show area so that they can just kind of go through one by one. Protection from the elements of nature such as rain, snow, sleet, hail, windstorm, etc. if required by the APHIS show veterinarian. So if the veterinarian feels it necessary, you have to provide a tent, or it could be inside. It depends on your facility. If basically the show is completely outside and there's one shelter, that's going to be the shelter. If you set up a tent or something and there's a shelter option that you're using for something else, they're probably going to want to take over the shelter instead of the tent. That's just how things work and how people are. A means to control crowds or onlookers in order that APHIS personnel may carry out their duties without interference and reasonable measure of safety if requested by APHIS show veterinarian. So basically, even if it's in the middle of everything, because of like the way the facility is put out or the way the showground looks, it should have like a sectioned off area that's only for the horse handler and veterinarian APHIS representative, so that the public and onlookers cannot get too close. An accessible, reliable, and convenient 110-volt electrical power source, so electrical plug-in. If electrical service is available at the show, exhibition, sale, or auction site, is requested by the show veterinarian. So basically extension cords. An appropriate area adjacent to the inspection area for designated horses to wait for inspection, and an area to be used for detention of horses. So the show will have to basically rent out a few extra stalls for detention of horses, or if the person has a stall, or maybe they would require the show people to have their own stalls instead of just coming through in their trailer. So just in case your horse gets detained for 24 hours, which is kind of ridiculous. But the next thing is certification and licensing of designated qualified persons. So designated qualified persons are what management does, who management designates to assist the APHIS representative in any of these things. So it's just an extra hand. Or assist when the APHIS representative is not there, but the veterinarian is. So a basic qualifications of a DQP applicants. DQPs holding a valid current DQP license issued in accordance with this part may be appointed by the management of any horse show, horse exhibition, sale, auction, qualified persons in accordance with Section 4C of the Act, to inspect horses, to detect or diagnose soring, and to otherwise inspect horses or any records pertaining to any horse for the purpose of enforcing the Act. Individuals who may be licensed as DQPs under this part shall be doctors of veterinary medicine who are accredited in any state by United States Department of Agriculture under Part 161 of Chapter I, Title IX of the Code Federal Regulations, who are members of the American Association of Equine Practitioners, or large animal practitioners with substantial equine experience, or knowledgeable in the area of equine lameness as related to soring practices, such as doctors of veterinary medicine with small animal practice who own, train, judge, or show horses. So they can be a small animal veterinarian but own horses and still be this. Accredited doctors of veterinary medicine who meet these criteria may be licensed as DQPs by a horse industry organization or association whose DQP program has been certified by the department under this part without undergoing the formal training requirements set forth in this section. Farriers, horse trainers, and other knowledgeable horsemen whose past experience and training would qualify them for positions as horse industry organization or association stewards or judges or their equivalent, and who have been formally trained and licensed as DQPs by a horse industry organization or other associations whose DQP program has been certified by the department in accordance with this section. So any association can have a DQP program that they are trained in. Now, when we go over the fifth part of this series, we'll go over the changes to the Act. I think there are some DQP changes that happened, but I didn't look that part over as well. So again, this is the original one, and then we will go over the changes later in Part 5. The certification requirements for DQP programs. The department will not license DQPs on an individual basis. Licensing of DQPs will be accomplished only through the DQP programs and certified by the department and initiated by the department and initiated and maintained by horse industry organizations or associations. Any horse industry organization or association desiring department certification to train and license DQPs under the Act shall submit to the administrator a formal request in writing for certification and of its DQP program and detailed outline of such program for department approval. Such outline shall include the organizational structure of such organization or association in the names of the officers, persons in charge of the management, and organization or association. The outline shall also contain at least the following. So this is basically saying any, good organization that has all of these persons can submit a formal request to have a DQP program that has been certified by the Department of Agriculture. So the criteria, the criteria to be used in selecting DQP candidates and minimum qualifications and knowledge regarding horses each candidate must have in order to be admitted to the program. 2. A copy of the formal training program, classroom and practical, required to be completed by each DQP candidate for before being licensed by such horse industry and organization or association, including the minimum number of hours, classroom and practical, and the subject matter of each training program. Such training program must meet the following minimum standards in order to be certified by the Department of Agriculture department under the Act. Here's the first one. 2 hours of classroom instruction and anatomy and physiology of the limbs of a horse. The instructor teaching the course must be specified, and a resume of said instructor's background, experience, and qualifications to teach such course shall be provided to the administrator. 2 hours of classroom instruction on the Horse Protection Act and regulations and their interpretation. Instructors for this course must be furnished or recommended by the department. Requests for instructors to be furnished or recommended must be made to the administrator in writing at least 30 days prior to such course. So this is expensive. 4 hours of classroom instruction on the history of soaring, the physical examinations, procedures necessary to detect soaring, the detection and diagnosis of soaring, and related subjects. The instructor teaching the course must be specified and a summary of said instructor's background, experience, and qualifications to teach such course must be provided to the administrator. 4 hours of practical instruction in clinics and seminars, including live horses with actual application of knowledge gained in the classroom, subject covered in paragraphs B to II, and III of this section. So we just went through the II, II, and III of the section. And B is the certification requirements for the DQP programs that we just did. All right, methods and procedures required to perform a thorough and uniform examination of a horse shall be included. The names of the instructors and resume of their backgrounds and academic practical experience and qualifications to present such instruction shall be provided to the administrator. Notification of the actual date, time, duration, subject matter, and geographic location of such clinics or seminars must be sent to the administrator at least 10 days prior to each such clinic or seminar. 1 hour of classroom instruction regarding DQP standards of conduct promulgated by the licensing organization or association pursuant to paragraph D7 of this section. 7 is coming up. 1 hour of classroom instruction on record keeping and reporting requirements and procedures. A sample of written examination which must be passed by DQP candidates for successful completion of the program, along with sample answers and scoring thereof and proposed passing and failing standards. So before I keep moving on, I keep thinking of the fact that this is going to be expensive to put on, expensive to attend, and DQPs are unlikely to just want to volunteer their time after paying for all of this stuff, unless their organization or association pays for them to go through this program and then has an expectation of like minimum volunteer requirements. So this is part of where it becomes expensive. The next thing is criteria to be used to determine qualifications and performance abilities of DQP candidates selected for the training program, and the criteria used to indicate successful completion of the training program, in addition to written examination required in paragraph B3 of this section. So 3 was the section just before this. 5. The criteria and schedule for continuing education program and the criteria methods of monitoring the appraising performance for continued licensing of DQPs, such organization or association, and continuing education program for DQPs shall consist of not less than 4 hours of instruction per year. So even when you get licensed as a DQP, you have to have continuing education and relicensing, I think, every year or every so often. Procedures for monitoring horses in the unloading, preparation, warm-up, and barn areas, or such areas such monitoring may include any horse that is stabled, loaded on a trailer, being prepared for the show, exhibition, sale, auction, or exercise, or that is otherwise on the grounds or present at any horse show, exhibition, or horse sale or auction. So that's anybody. 7. The methods to be used to ensure uniform interpretation and enforcement of the Horse Protection Act and regulations by DQPs and uniform procedures for inspecting horses for compliance of the Act regulations. So methods have to be, not only does knowledge have to be consistent, methods have to be consistent as well. So 8, the standards of conduct for DQPs promulgated by the organization or association in accordance with paragraph B7 of this section. So 7 was just before, so basically they have to be act professionally. 9, a formal request for the Department certification of the DQP program. So you have to be admitted to the program, so you have to apply to the program, you have to be accepted, and you have to be admitted, and then you have to pay for it. It's kind of like college. The horse industry organizations or associations that have formally requested department certification of their DQP training, enforcement, and maintenance program will receive a formal notice of certification from the department or reasons in writing why certification such program cannot be approved. So even if you go through the program, they may not even approve your application to be licensed. It's kind of like going through like an LPN program for nursing. So you pay for the LPN program. So you get accepted into the LPN program, you pay for the LPN program to go through it, you test for it, and then you have to do what's called, I think it's like NSAT, or not NSAT. It's a test that even after you pass, say something like an LPN program, you have the degree, you then also have to go through the licensing to be a licensed profession or nurse practitioner, no, not nurse practitioner, but licensed nurse, basically. Not a registered nurse, but a licensed nurse. So it's kind of like that, and I think vet techs have a similar thing, but I'm more familiar with nursing. Anyway, a current list of certified DQP programs and licensed DQPs will be published in the Federal Register at least once a year, as may be further required for the purpose of deleting programs and names of DQPs that are no longer certified or licensed, of adding names of programs and DQPs that have been certified or licensed subsequent to the publication of this previous list. So I did try to go onto their website to try to find lists of DQP programs, and they have none. So in my opinion, unless the breed associations start doing something about it, good luck on getting certified. I think APHIS is trying to get rid of the DQPs because they likely want more control over the inspection process, and they don't want people that are associated with the breed associations. But that's just my surmising from what I understand from the updates without really reading into them fully. Again, we will get into that in part 5. And I will repeat, I hope that this does not come to fruition. I really hope that Trump decides to nullify this update to the program, because I really think, in my opinion, that it is a huge government overstep that does not need to happen. But we as a United States horse industry need to open our eyes to stuff like this and make sure that our breed associations and show management don't look the other way when, crap happens, basically. So when problems arise, when horses are lame, judges need to feel empowered to just stop the test and say no. Or when somebody knows that a horse is being drugged, don't be intimidated to go and report it anonymously. A lot of people in this industry are scared and intimidated of losing their jobs because they're doing something, because they're doing something right by reporting it. Not that I wouldn't want to work for somebody who's drugging horses, but if that's my livelihood and I still needed to find a job, I don't want to get fired just because I'm trying to do the right thing. So I think a law which should be should be enacted that protects the people behind this, that protects the grooms and the people being employed by these people, so that if something if something is reported, they don't go and try to rage fire a bunch of people that they think are involved in this. So I think that does need to happen. More protection of employees need to happen, but I think this particular thing is a bit extreme. And the redefining of soaring, because a lot of people are like, oh, it's just about soaring. We don't soar our horses, so half this stuff doesn't apply to us. But what they're trying to do is redefine soaring so that it can mean whatever they want it to mean. So this act is not good for the horse industry. It's not good for horses, because these same people want to keep the wild horses free and wild, which I agree with. But the trouble with that is, unless you thin out the herd with birth control or, capturing the horses, there needs to be something done, because they multiply, and there's only so much land, and they're no longer able to migrate. So horses are a migratory species if they're allowed to be. And back in the day when the range didn't have any fences and there weren't big cities and private properties weren't, separated, they had the freedom to migrate all the way down to Mexico. So the land had a chance to rest. Right now, they don't have that opportunity to migrate, because all of the sections, be it they are large, they're being shared by other wildlife and some of the beef industry, but they don't have that chance, so they're stuck where they are. And if you have a herd that's too large, they will all starve to death. And that's what PETA doesn't necessarily put out to the public. I'm sure they know, but they want every horse to be free all the time. But the problem is there's only so much space. There's only so much room, there's only so much space, and there's only so much food. And what the Bureau of Land Management does is they manage those herds. Now, a lot of what the BLM does, they want to get rid of them so that they don't have to deal with it as much, and they don't get sold as much, which I think, in my opinion, going into that, more good PR should be directed towards Mustangs, so that, the American horse industry doesn't need to be importing all of these horses or breeding all of these thoroughbreds. Controls have to be put on the American Jockey Club for that. So I think we should be promoting the use of Mustangs more, because that's our, Heartland's horse. That's America's horse. But, setting them all free is only going to make them starve to death, and making them disappear is not good either. So there just needs to be some sort of good and logical solution to all of these problems. So I feel like attacking the horse industry in this way is not the solution. I think promoting the massive amounts of Mustangs that we have every year is the solution, and maybe controlling the herd population with birth control. I know that you can control the breeding of a wild herd quite well if you start kind of at a distance inspecting the stallions and the mares that are associated with this, and thinking, okay, that mare doesn't look good, that horse doesn't have great conformation, let's catch those horses, not whole herds at a time, but let's catch those horses or birth control those horses so they don't, continue having foals that may not be healthy. I think that would be more fruitful and probably more profitable than just getting rid of them entirely, or catching whole groups. And catching whole groups can be a little bit less traumatizing too. Many Mustangs are so traumatized from being rounded up that they're so scared of just the sound of a helicopter. And they have to specifically be, not desensitized, but their confidence needs to be brought back up, because they associate the helicopter with absolute terror, because their entire family is getting rounded up, separated, sorted out, and some horses just never see any of their herd again. And that's depressing and sad, and the whole thing needs to be reformed, because I don't think we're doing it right, but getting rid of things isn't right either. So we can go into that in another video, but these are just some of my thoughts and surmisings and opinions on how this whole thing works. And I do need to, and before I would do that on the Mustangs, I would need to do more research on the process and where they're kept and how they're sorted and why some of them go to auction and some of them don't. And the Horse Protection Act, if this, goes all the way through the industry, would destroy the Mustang auction, because these horses can't be handled. They're wild. They can't be auctioned off for individuals to gentle like they are now if this was a thing, because they cannot be inspected. And yeah, they're going to have scars because they came off the range wild. Yeah, they might be lame. Yeah, they probably are not sale quality right now, and they need work. They're Mustangs off the range. So this act, unless there was some sort of exception, would just completely destroy that process. And I don't think that's right, because a lot of people don't put the fact that if you have too many animals on a specific piece of land, they will all starve. Not just a few, they will all starve. So people just have to understand the reality of certain situations. But anyway, that was part 2 of the Horse Protection Act, and that went into management and DQPs. Part 3 will be coming out somewhat soon-ish, now that my office is repainted, which is the reason why a whole week was skipped, and last week I think the whole week last week was completely skipped. So thanks for bearing with me, guys, and I appreciate your views, and I appreciate your comments and your likes. So if you want to see more content like this, please like and subscribe, and check out our Patreon. And again, thank you, patrons, for sponsoring this whole thing. I appreciate your help, and thank you, local clients, for making this entire operation possible. I hope you have a wonderful day, and please be kind.